started. We'll get started in just one minute. So Leanne from Kelowna, I'm sure I've completely mispronounced that. Yes, it's early morning for you, so good to have you. It'll be a great start to your day. Okay, so it is on the hour, so we're going to get started. So again, as always, I really do welcome questions, and would be delighted to be able to field them as we're going through that. And some questions have already come in beforehand, and I'll try to make sure that I get to them. But I definitely will have the answers as we're going through today's session. Okay, so what I'd like to start with is just my promise to you that I want to make sure that today is practical and that it is filled with ideas for you, but most importantly, with something that's going to help you to step back from your business, from your role, and to give you a different lens through which to look at the sales process. And indeed, it is going to take doing something different in order to go after larger or more valuable pieces of business. And I hope to share with you a perspective and give you a framework in which to think through and look at your business and see, well, am I ready? Am I ready to make that leap? But first, I want to share with you a story from my friend Andy, who is captain of a lifeboat in the RNLI off the coast of Wales. And last October, he just was getting home from work, that feeling you just about to sit down on the couch, and then his pager went off, and straight away he jumped up into action. It meant that there was an emergency situation, and within a number of minutes, he was leading his team out onto the open sea. 2 canoeists had been reported missing, had gone out earlier in that day and hadn't come home. So they headed off, and within a few minutes, they were lucky enough to found their first guy. And while he was tired and he was a little bit shaken, he was mostly concerned for his friend, who he last saw out of the canoe. And so the situation was now a lot worse because it was getting cold, getting dark, and there was a man in the open water. So they headed off in the direction where he was last seen. And what can happen in these scenarios is that there can be some false sightings, and it could be a sea lion, for example, or it could be some debris. And that happened 2 or 3 times. And so Andy was getting a little bit concerned at this stage because it was getting quite dark. He had a team that he needed to get home safely, and he could have called off the search at this stage and called in the helicopter, but he knew there'd be a time delay with that. So he thought about it for a moment, and this is what he decided to do. He decided to turn off the engine and simply just listen. And so that is what he did. And there was silence for about 30 seconds. And then they heard the faint whistle coming from that direction, and off they sped over there, and they found their man. And as Andy was telling this story, he made an analogy to what we're like in business sometimes. What are the noisy engines in the background that are constantly humming, or might be humming in your head? What we can tend to fill our lives and fill our space with noise, and fill our business with noise. And so what is that noise that we can turn off and really, really tune in and listen? And, listen in a few different ways. Listen to yourself, very importantly. Listen to your team, listen to your clients, and perhaps listen to friends and family also. So today I will talk a good bit about the power of listening, because I know that that is really, really important to win the larger pieces of business. And that conversation piece is very, very important. But for today and for our session, if you could turn off any noise or any notifications or put your phone on silent, because I would really love you to get the most for the next hour of your life, and make sure that it's productive, seeing as you've taken the time to turn up. And if you're tempted to, write a proposal or to check your emails during the webinar, during the workshop, to please resist the temptation to do that, because you will miss something. Okay. So write yes in the chat box if that's okay for you, and you can make a commitment to get the most from the next hour. Because what I want to share with you is practical stuff. And I want to share with you, how Brian won business worth 5 million from changing his conversation, how Justine increased her team's conversion rate. And she had a team of about 30 people by 7%, which was very significant when her average deal size was 500,000 to $1 million. How Lena here won business worth 60,000 when she first tried out the conversation technique that I share. And Anthony too went on to win 3 different pieces of business worth 220,000 within 3 months from the same client, all because he changed his approach. Heather completely revamped their proposal, and she had been working or trying to win business from a particular corporate client for 3 years in a row. Each time was asked to submit a bid for the business. She never won it. She was extremely frustrated, and she changed her approach and she changed her proposal and won 75% of that client's business, which made a big difference to her year. How Lena said, thank you for showing her a different way, and a way that felt more comfortable for her of doing things, and how Tanya had the confidence to open a new office based on the success that she was having. So first, let's talk about the big C, and I'm going to put a poll there. Please let me know if you can see that. It's on conversion rate, and just let me know, what is your conversion rate? Where do you lie in these in these percentages? And a lot of the time, sometimes it can be, if you raise your conversion rate by a few percent, depending on the deal size, that can be a really, really big and significant shift that can happen in your business. So almost everybody has, okay, we still have a few more people doing the poll. So we have, a few, we kind of have everybody in most of the ranges. So 5 to 10%. We have the 11 to 12. We've most people in that 41 to 59%, which is great. And then I guess the question is, what difference will it make to your business in order to increase that, to grow that by 5%? I had a conversation with a guy last week, and based on the volume of leads that he's receiving, that his team are receiving every week, it was a value of about 400,000 each week. We figured out that just increasing his conversion rate by 1% would add $1 million to the bottom line, So sometimes it's the small things, it's the tweaks that we can make that makes a really significant difference. Okay, so folks, tell me, what do you see? Put it in the chat box there. What are you seeing right now? It's got, I play this at different places around the world, and people see so many different things. A dog, Aileen. Yes, few people do see a dog, indeed. A dog, a cat, a cow even, a man in a bathtub, And I had a guy in Dubai actually, and he said, Ciara, he says, I see somebody behind a TV stand, you know, or I see somebody trying to get over a wall. There's a number of different things that you're going to see in this. But what I'm going to ask you to do next, folks, if you have your pen and if you have your workbook, great. I'd sent them out. They're in an email there I sent about 2 hours ago. But if you don't worry, just grab pen and paper. So I'm going to ask you to draw right now, okay? And I'm going to ask you to draw for a very specific reason, because when we draw, it taps into that part of the brain where our creativity lies, and we don't tend to use that every day. And you know, when you were 5, you thought you were fabulous at drawing, right? And you loved to draw. So I wanted to go back to your 5-year-old self and just go a bit crazy drawing. And what I want you to draw and to visualize here, and that's the key thing, is draw how you would feel if you reach your revenue goals for 2022. Ideally, you're reaching them that bit quicker because you're winning, you're winning bigger value business. Okay, so do me a favor, and do yourself a favor and take a few minutes just to draw something, just to tap into that part of our brain. And if anybody wants to share what they're drawing, fabulous. Oh, Marjolaine, you're seeing somebody in bed. There you go. Well, you see, that's where your mind is today, so that's fine too. Marjolaine, I think you're joining us from Portugal, right? A baby in a tram, George is seeing. Good one as well, George. Kid in a cart, Leanne. There you go. Absolutely. So I leave you to your drawing, folks. Let me know when it's done. So how are the works of art coming along there? Let me know if you're done. Your doodle some words, Leanne. That's fine. You can doodle some words, but I encourage you to just draw something, anything at all, because it's about tapping into that part of your brain. There really is. There's a link between the hand and the brain. So feel free to do that as I'm going through this. And I had a great conversation there with Gary Butters before Christmas, and he's a very senior guy in software sales and has led a team, a very large global team for a number of years. And I was asking him, what are the key things that he really needs to see in his team and that he uses as a gauge to make sure that his team are on track. And he told me these 3 things. So I put this gas analogy to it. So growth attitude. Do you or your team, do you have that attitude to growth, that you know that you don't know everything and that you don't know what you don't know? And is that attitude, that aptitude there, and that love of learning? And what are the right activities? Is there consistently a focus on the right activities that's going to lead to bigger results? Is there a consistency in your business in identifying what are and who are the larger pieces of business that you want, and taking the right activities to go after that? And then that skills. So what are the skills that are needed to take that leap? And are you making sure that your team have them, or yourself? Okay, so I made this analogy of gas. What's the gas in the tank? Because the tank needs to be topped up and kept full to make it really count this year. And speaking of gas and tanks, it's very important that you take yourself into consideration too, and that you are minding you and doing something for you each day. And for myself, I've been working a lot in the last 2 years on my morning ritual. And, when you get on a plane, which I haven't been on a while, but I will be next month, the first thing that you're told to do in a case of emergency is to put on your own oxygen mask first. And so what is that oxygen that you need for yourself every day? For me, it's that morning routine. It's my walk in the morning, or some type of exercise. And I love to journal. I've really got a lot from writing and doing a little meditation. I do just a 10-minute ritual, about my intentions for the day and how do I visualize the day going. And that word visualization is coming up again. And I watched a very interesting documentary just yesterday on free solo climbing, and a guy called Alex Honnold. So perhaps Google that. And he free soloed this massive cliff face in Yosemite Park. And, did he just go out and decide to do it one day? No, he had been climbing all his life. He's still a young man in his 30s, been climbing for 20 years, but he prepared for 2 years to make this big summit. And he climbed that rock face 40 to 50 times with ropes. And he memorized every single crevice in it and every part where he would put his foot and his hand. And it was like a dance. But he stood back from the crevice and he visualized it because he knew that he would get afraid at one stage, that fear could strike him and that he might make that wrong move at that stage. And so he visualized how he would react when that happened. And I think it's a really important part of sales, because I see a lot of fear in sales and I see people holding back from going after the bigger pieces of business. And there's no need to do that when that kind of preparation is in place. And this is a picture of my dad and myself. And, I still remember him just throwing me up into the air. I was age 2 or 3 here. And of course, he caught me every time. But I think that this really says trust. And I was the only one out of 5 kids that really trusted him. And I just, spread everything out and just pretended like I was flying. And when we're working with clients, there is a fear there. There's a fear on their behalf that you might do brand damage, or that you might do damage to their reputation if they choose to work with that wrong company. And that those feelings of know, like, and trust are really, really important, especially in the digital world. The digitalization is really important, and it can help you to get to a certain stage in the client's in earning the trust of the client. But at some stage, you have to leap into that conversation, and building these emotions of trust and confidence is really, really important for your team to know how to build this, and for them to have that in the process also. Now, what I want to walk you through are a few of the steps that I've created that I know work and are practical in order to help you to get to that bigger piece of business and to win it. And where did this come from? Well, I've had a career in sales. I started out in my early 20s in working in advertising, and then moved into the event world when I moved to San Francisco. And while I was very good at sales, when I went to the buyer's side, which was maybe about 10 years later, I realized that I had made a lot of mistakes, and that I was really selling from, my company's point of view, and I really wasn't selling from the client's point of view. And that's a lot of the work that I do, is to help people to step into the world of the clients in order to really, gain a holistic understanding of what's happening in their world so that you can sell better. And most importantly, that you can design a sales process that is client-centric, that they feel was created for them. So that's what I did. And I got an awful lot of clarity in 2013 when I started to write my book, Steps to Win. And while it was very therapeutic for me personally to do that, because I got everything in my head out, it gave me immense clarity. And I saw that I had a process, that I had a map to help other companies to build a client-centric process. So that's what I'm going to share with you. So number one, how do you stand out and sound different? And how are you really separating yourself from your competitors? And I'll go back into a little bit more detail in these in a minute. Step two is really separating yourself from the pack with the conversation and your technique, and how do you lead a client-centric conversation. And that's about figuring out what are the killer questions to lead these conversations that are going to convert, will lead to a proposal, and will lead to business. And that very important step is writing that winning proposal. And there's a technique that I teach, there's a process, there's a formula that I teach also, that the client feels that the proposal was prepared for them. The fourth step is building that healthy sales funnel. And you might say, Ciara, why don't you start with building the healthy sales funnel? Well, I start with the first three steps, because if you put more leads into a leaky sales funnel, then you're wasting opportunities. And step 1, 2, and 3 are what will help you to fix the leaks in the sales funnel. So, some of you have a conversion rate of 5 to 10%. That means you have a lot of leaks. Some of you have a conversion rate of up to 40 or 50%. But that still means that 40 to 50% of your time isn't productive, because those leads are being wasted. So we look at building that healthy sales funnel and identifying the right kind of clients. And steps 1 and 2 will help to really get that right and get the messaging right when you're really, really listening to the clients and focusing in on their language. And then step 5 is that wow product experience. Perhaps it's the show around. How are they able to experience your product or your service from their desk or from their phone? Or if they're able to come in person, is it a wow? And how are they able to experience it in some shape or form before actually saying yes? And step 6 is building the better sales tools. Your sales tools need to be dramatically changed in the last 2 years, because everything has shifted so much. And the sales tools are really what clients use every day to help them to make a decision. And step 4 then is referral marketing, word of mouth marketing. And, a lot of companies will say that's really, really important to us. We get a lot of referrals. But my question is there a strategy in place in order to enable that? And it's a very proactive tool that you can have in your business also. Okay. So this is a message that I got from Elena just yesterday, actually, and she connected with me on LinkedIn. I think it was in October sometime, and she's head of sales. She is based in the US, and it's a global organization. And, so I was kind of surprised to get a message like this. And please tell me in the chat box, how would you feel if this was the experience that you've had? But, I'm sure a few of you are experiencing that, this is happening out there. And this is from a senior person. Having looked it up, she's been in sales for maybe about 15 years. So I wrote back, no, thank you. And she said, thanks for your reply. I'd be grateful if you could introduce us to someone who might be interested, right? So, based on this, I wrote back to her and I said, look, I don't know you, and I don't know your product or your service. So how could I do that? And she did get back to me today and said, look, I understand where you're coming from. Please let me tell you about my business and send you a presentation. So again, that's not an approach that's going to work. It's not going to an approach that's definitely not going to work to get the attention of a big corporate buyer, or somebody of influence who you really want to open up a conversation with. And there's a number of different approaches that you can take here, but one that worked for me in 2016. I have a strong email subject line, and my husband helped to build the holiday home for Sir Tim Clark, who's the CEO of Emirates Airlines. And so from time to time, Mr. Clark would email my husband and ask him to maybe look at something in the house or to get fixed or whatever. And my husband is really, really bad at checking email. And I was in his email one day and I saw all these, emails from Sir Tim Clark. I'm like, Michael, why are you ignoring the man? So I emailed him back and said, completely apologized. Please go through me. This is my email, and I'm happy to get Michael to work on something for you. So I kind of built up a bit of a relationship with him, and his assistant would email me also. And she read my tagline, my email signature, and she said, wow, Ciara, she says, your business looks really interesting. I must introduce you to Justine Thomas Butler, who heads up the meetings department for Emirates Airlines and the sales department. So I was like, fabulous. I'd love that, So she introduced us via email, and I said to Justine, by any chance, are you going to IBTM World, which is a big conference for that industry, the next month? And she said, yeah, I'll be there. So we arranged to meet. So we had a great conversation and we got along very well. And she was all excited. And she said, you know what? She said, Ciara, if everybody in Dubai, if all the hotels in Dubai did what you recommend that you do, that would make my life so much easier. So she wanted to introduce me to sales departments of businesses that she does business with. And I said, fabulous. Like I really wasn't expecting that. But in order to make it easier, that step easier, I didn't want her to feel like she was selling me. So I had created a lead magnet, and I said, look, I've created something that even if they decide never to have a conversation with me, that this would be of value to them if they read that. And so she sent it to about 10 hotels, and 4 of them called me straight away and said, it's like you've read my mind. I have been searching for you. So, that was the power of really generating something that was of value, that definitely helped me to stand out. And also, very importantly, helped with that, those referral opportunities, and made it easier for Justine to do that. So yeah, a few of you saying there in the chat box that happens all the time, that you get these kind of messages on LinkedIn. So, how can you carve out a different experience? So taking standing out, sounding different, like it's a fabulous time to be creative and innovative right now. And this is a barista coffee shop in South New Zealand, actually. And this happened like in early 2020, like very soon after the whole lockdown. And while his coffee shop, people couldn't go into it, he created a 2-meter long train track. And that's how he delivered his coffee to people. And he had people lined up around the block for his coffee. And what the novelty of this. So it's an interesting time to really rethink things and do things in a very different way. And I think to really zone in on what's important to the client. For a minute, folks, I want you to imagine that you've been invited to dinner to your boss's house, right? And let's imagine that your boss loves wine, and they know the wine, and you really want to make sure that you bring the right bottle of wine that makes an impression. And you walk into your average wine store. I don't know about where you live, but a lot of them are like this around here. And I'm always confused. I'm always filled with a sense of confusion, going, I know that I want white, but after that I might be trying to make a decision based on price, because the descriptions and the countries, and they don't necessarily mean an awful lot to me as to what is a good or a nice bottle of wine that will make that right impression. Okay, so do you identify with this? Are the liquor or the wine stores in your neck of the woods like this? So let's look at what's the language. What's the language that the seller is using here? So they're describing wine as it's red, it's dry, it's full body, it's spicy, it's rich, and perhaps it's French, right? I don't know about you, but this does not help me in any shape or form to make an informed decision. But let's imagine that you walk into the Bottle Rocket in New York City, and they have arranged wine in a very different way. And if you can see here, they have a special section of gifts for the boss, right? And I can imagine a sense of calm. You can straight away eliminate all the other hundreds of bottles of wine and zone in on these 4 or 5 that they're recommending will make the right impression. And really what they're doing is they're making it easy to say yes. And they're very specific, this wine store. If you notice over here, I know the photograph isn't that great, but they have a listing here of the 3rd date. So they have specific wines for that 3rd date, which I thought was brilliant. But let's look at the language here, right? We can tend to talk in the lingo of our industry, and the wine industry is the red, the dry, the full body, the spicy, the rich, and the French. But really what the client is saying, the conversation that's happening in the client's head is, I just want a bottle of wine that will impress my boss. So, once you change your language to enter the conversation that's happening in the client's head, then you're an awful lot more relevant. Then that helps you to stand out. And most importantly, that helps you to get to the next step of the client's decision-making process, which in this economy is about earning the right to have that conversation. It's not an immediate thing, an automatic thing that's going to happen. You have to earn and work harder to open up the conversations. And using the client's language, showing that you understand the problems that they have and they don't want, or the results that they want and they don't have, will help you in order to do that. And you'll see there's lots of different companies doing this in different ways, and they're creating these lead magnets. What is valuable enough that somebody will give you their email in return for content or an experience that you can provide, or something that's of interest to them. And then of course it's how you nurture in the relationship after that. But like that great pitch, it's not about it's about opening the conversation. It's not about closing the deal. And a lot of people think that pitch is about closing the deal. It's right, you're still right at the beginning of the client's decision making process. So I want you to ponder for a minute, folks, and just mark your team or yourself out of 10 in terms of how do you stand out. What have you created to really help separate you from the pack? And a lot of your marketing will come into this. A lot of if you're lucky enough to have a separate marketing department, and how are marketing really generating these leads or these quality leads, and how well are you working with marketing in order to help them to do that? And then your team and their personal outreach, how are they standing out? What are they doing different in order to earn that conversation, to build their brand and to build their reputation as somebody who is a wonderful person to have a conversation with? Okay, so mark yourself out of 10 there, folks, and we'll move on to step 2, which is these killer questions that lead client conversations. And listening is a very important skill that comes into play here. And the art of listening, it's not about hearing what someone says, but it's really about hearing how they feel, and how tuned in are you and your team in that, and how well orchestrated is your conversation in order to be able to tap into the emotions that are behind the sale. Because clients, they don't make a decision based on price, facts, and figures. They make a decision based on how you make them feel, and so it has to be an emotive experience, and the team and yourself need to be confident in really being able to lead that. So we're going to practice some listening skills for a minute, folks, and I want you to tune into to this and tell me what you hear, and if possible, how many birds that you hear. What else are you hearing? Okay, just let me know if you can hear that. Okay, what's coming up for you there? Those are some of the sounds from my morning walks. Is the Irish countryside, the Cork countryside, around Cooley. About how many birds do you think you could hear there? Don't be shy. 4 birds. You heard a few birds and a cow or two. It's interesting. A lot of people say a cow. Those were actually sheep. I know it sounded a little bit like a cow, but that was it was a big ram, I think, big male sheep. But yeah, I'm not a bird expert. I can't tell you exactly, but I did send it to a friend of mine who is a bird expert, and he reckons there's about 7 or 8 different birds there. But it's a dawn chorus, and there was a lot of male birds there, and there's a lot of chat and a lot of competition to get the attention of the female birds. So it's wonderful. It's like a cacophony actually in the morning, heading off, and I played that for you, number one, because usually people enjoy it. But if you want to practice your listening skills, sitting in nature and just simply being for a while is a wonderful way to do that. And just observing, what am I hearing? Whether you're in a city or whether you're in the countryside, it doesn't matter. And really just focusing in on what am I hearing, and being okay with that, and not being tempted to take out the phone, and simply just be for a while. And in the work that I do with different clients, I try to bring in nature as much as possible, because I think there's a lot that we can learn from nature. But it's also because it has a wonderful effect on us when we really just take that time to sit and be and observe and wonder at how fabulous nature is, and what we can learn from that. Okay, so I'm going to draw something real quick now, folks, and I want you to just simply try to guess what it is that I've drawn. You can start asking questions there now as I'm drawing, and it's nothing that's too complicated or anything now, but just let's see how quickly we can do this. Okay, I'm finished. Feel free to ask me some questions and try to figure it out. Okay, so is it a person? No, it's not a person. What color is it? It can be any color. Yeah. Is it made from natural materials? It can be. Yeah, it can be. It's quite flexible in that regard. It can be made from a number of different things. Come on, ask me any kind of question. Is it something that I've used today? Yes, I've used it today, and I would imagine that you have used it a number of times. Is it a continuous line, Fiona? No, no, it's not a continuous line. But I would have drawn lines when drawing it. Yes, yeah. I can tell Fiona's the artistic flair there. Is a towel, Marjolaine? No, it's not a towel. It's not a towel. Nope. Is it something that is in a building? Yes. Yeah, it is something that is in a building, Elena. It's in a building. It would be in your home too. Okay, so for the sake of time, I'm going to show you what it is. It's a door, right? And you know, I play this game, and it's interesting. No matter where in the world, I have a lot of the similar types of questions in terms of, if you observe the kind of questions that I was mainly asked, what color is it? Is it natural material? Is it something that I've used today? Is it a towel? Is it in a building? Those are kind of yes or no answer questions. And I really couldn't elaborate too much. They're quite closed-ended questions. Whereas in the conversation technique with clients, it's really important to ask open-ended questions. And in a lot of industries, you know, it can be tempting to just get straight down into the details, perhaps, of a brief, and how many of them do you need, or, you know, how many people are in the team. And really, you know, in working with teams, I help them to really think about how can you tap into the emotions behind the sale for a client. And it's by asking open-ended questions that really helps to get the client talking. So, you know, great way to open a conversation can be simply tell me about, and observe what they answer first. And of course, you know, once you're getting into the more really strategic and the more serious questions, it's questions such as, you know, what are some of the outcomes of our work together? You know, what is happening in your business? Tell me about what has changed. And I think it's really important that we don't make the assumptions right now that with our existing clients that everything is the same. Everything in their business has completely changed. Their needs have changed. And so it's a very important time to be requalifying them and seeing what they need. And they're very important questions, and it's a structure that really helps to build trust and confidence with new clients. And you know, you have to ask yourself, what value can the sales team bring to the prospects that the prospect can't figure out by themselves? They can get a lot of the answers to their questions by being on your website or by going through your sales tools, if they're you know, if they're detailed enough and if they're good enough. So, you know, a lot of the time, it's your role, it's your team's role to help the client get clarity on what they really need, and to really figure out what are the problems, what are the solutions, and then to figure out who and what is the right fit, you know. So I teach a conversation frame, a 4-step conversation frame that gives a structure to a conversation. It's never about scripting it and, you know, getting somebody to rhyme off all this stuff. It's a confidence really in giving a team a structure, and that's a sales leader's role, is to give structure to the team and to allow them to add their personality to it, and to allow them to add their unique way to it also. So it's, you know, opening it and taking the lead, and then the next step is defining that gap. So where is the client now, and where do they want to be? How better off do they want to be after having done some work with you? The third step then is really that solution mode, so that the client needs to feel at this stage that you have listened to them, that you understand their world, you understand their business, you understand what's important to them, and then you're able to talk and match what it is that you do, if indeed you are the fit. And then a big step that a lot of salespeople don't do is getting the next step and establishing that next step before you hang up the phone or before you finish that interaction. So, I see really big shifts in clients and in sales teams when they gain the confidence in this. And I'm just wondering, for you or for your business, why aren't more conversations happening, do you think? What are you seeing? What are you hearing from your team as to what is that block in stopping them from having conversations? And just maybe share something in the chat box there. Or in the Q&A. Good few of you are writing in the Q&A box too, Yeah, so we're seeing, a few people are writing in similar to what I'm hearing as well. There's a really big fear of hearing no. And there's perhaps that lack of knowledge on how to lead the conversation. And when I do mentoring with different teams, sometimes they whisper to me, they're like, Ciara, I don't know what is an interesting conversation to have with a client after I've asked, the specifics about that product or the service. They don't know how to make it strategic or how to really engage the client and make that connection. And that's a really, really important part of the sales process to get right, is that connection with particular clients or with prospect clients. There's an over-reliance on technology, and a lot of leaders will come to me frustrated, like my team are just selling through email, and that's not enough to make a connection. And what can happen there is, a lot of the time we can indirectly position ourselves as a supplier, instead of as the partner. And you really need to be positioned as that partner, because when you're seen as a supplier by a prospect buyer, the conversation tends to be about rate. And, if you're consistently hearing that they lost business because of rate, then that conversation hasn't been elevated to, to being of partner status, And a really big one, I don't have time to pick up the phone, but it takes so long to write a detailed email, and you could put hours and hours into over and back with a client and preparing a proposal and sending a quotation, and then not win the business, so that's hours wasted. Whereas you could pick up the phone and within an hour you've made that connection, and you've really elevated yourself and separated yourself from the pack, from your competitors. And in talking about questions, we were full of questions when we were younger. These are my boys, about 6 years ago, and they were filled with questions. Why does air float, mommy? How does the clock know the time? Brilliant question, right? And at school, we become the knowers, because we're supposed to sit and listen and learn, and you're supposed to know all the answers to questions, right? And instead, before we went to school, we were watching and questioning and wondering, and we've lost that, and we've lost that as an adult. And when you're 5 years old, apparently we asked about 65 questions a day, and adults might only ask 5, whereas it's so important in the sales process and for your team to be comfortable with that. And Layla, like she practiced her killer questions to fantastic results, and I was so happy to receive this email from her. She said the client was sincerely grateful that I asked such questions, and he said nobody asks questions from him, they just show PowerPoint presentations. And he really appreciated that she was thinking that way, and respected him enough to really ask and be curious, right? So it's like she thanked me. I just loved getting this. And this shift from an us to a you mentality has really worked wonders on how she thinks of the whole sales process, right? And a lot of the time it's about mindset. Mindset is always a choice. And I used to think I was in the training business. I'm not. I'm in that changing of mindset and the changing of habits business, which takes longer and But it's a lot more it's a lot more worthwhile when you get there. And Anthony, like, he wrote 220,000, and interestingly, when he was telling me this story, he said, Ciara, I know it shouldn't have taken an hour for, he was nearly apologizing for speaking to a client for an hour. I was like, God, that was the most profitable hour you've ever spent, Anthony. So mark a team out of 10, or yourself, in how well you think you are in leading that client conversation, in preparing for client conversations, and in the all important asking of these strategic killer questions. Okay, mark yourself out of 10. So real quickly on the proposal, the first paragraph of the proposal, it's the most important. Why? Because that's the part they're going to read. If they're bored already in the first paragraph, they tend to skip straight through to rate. So you have to make the first paragraph all about the client. And this, a lot of clients that I work with, I've read thousands of proposals. When I was a buyer, I read thousands of proposals. I've reviewed thousands of proposals over the last 7 or 8 years of doing this work. And it's always the same. Usually the first paragraph is about, your business, what you're trying to sell, whereas you have to do it the opposite way around and make it about the client. Ensure that they're personalized, right? That there's a bit of passion and personality in there, and not to make it all about price, right? There's ways to avoid that while still giving the client exactly what they need. And Bex she was stuck in a rut of sending out proposals, and she remembered what she loved about her job after doing a bit of work with me and focusing on the client. And that's why she got into the business. And we want to make sure that our sales team and our salespeople aren't losing that. Okay, so mark yourself out of 10 in terms of the proposal, and where you feel you are on that, and how more client-centric it can be. The fourth step here is on building the sales funnel. And I'm going to revert to Amy Infante, who is on this webinar. And Amy is the founder and CEO of GitGo Group, and has established a wonderful business and built it through hard grit, right, Amy? She has a team of 25 people in Nebraska who are prospecting all day long. So it's sales lead generation business. And she's constantly finding business in the most fabulous places for her clients. But she created this process, which I think is important enough to share here, because it's very relevant to going after bigger pieces of business. So let's look at the buying process from the client's point of view. So something in their world, in the B2B buyer's market, has changed, right? And they find they have new needs, right? Then they go into ideate and research mode, and they're figuring out their options on what are the different types of solution. And they go into the different assessments, and then they have to build an internal business case and establish the budget and who's going to be responsible for the budget. And maybe there's 2 or 3 different departments that are in on this budget. And then they go into that vendor engagement. So it's only then that they're interacting with you. This is 6 steps into their buying process, and they're assessing and they're selecting. So what tends to happen is that you are squeezed into the latter part of a buying process that you haven't been involved in these steps here. So ideally, and in particular, in going after bigger business, you need to enter the conversation with the client when they're back here, right? When they're at the very early stages of that. And then you can influence the idea and the solutions and the assessment stage of that. And if you want to know a bit more about that, Amy Infante is your lady to listen to. But Jennifer here, Jennifer is in the industry probably about 20 years. But I think what's really important is that she brushed up on her skills of going after new business, and that helped her to feel more confident in how to prospect and how to approach client relationships, especially in the middle of a pandemic. And so that's really important to give your client that, or your team and yourself, that skill set or that confidence and that mojo to get up and do something that little bit different. So So, you're looking at the mindset. If you have a new mindset, you're going to get new results. And then it's taking action and taking a different action that's going to give you that result. We don't have time to do that little game now, but I just wanted to make sure that I'm leaving you folks with enough time and respecting your time, because we're coming towards the end. But clients at the end of the day, they don't care about your business, right? They care about their problems. And a lot of the time we're leading with our business instead of really stepping back and figuring out, okay, what is most important to the client here, and how can I adjust my sales process to be more client centric? And those conversations, they create cash. Conversations create cash. And is that a KPI? Is that something that even you yourself have consistently built in, that I know I need to have X amount of conversations every week? Okay, so let's pause for a minute, folks, and I want you to look back over your notes, and I want you to take a look at the four main areas that we went into. And how did you mark yourself or your team out of 10 in these four areas? Because if you want to, I think it's a handy tool to walk away from the last hour together with and say, what, I gave myself a 4 out of 10 here. That's an area that I need to look more into. So I want this to be productive. I want you to walk away with some clarity on where needs to be fixed, or what needs to be made better in your business in order to be ready to go after bigger pieces of business. Okay, and feel free to share in the Q&A or in the chat box. If you write in the Q&A there, it's private to me. The chat box is more open to everybody. Okay. So how can I help you? That is my question. And I usually give 2 strategy calls at the end of these workshops. So I'm just going to put that link in the chat box there, that if you want access to a conversation to me, that we can easily set that up. Okay, so I'm going to put a link to my calendar in the chat box there. And if anybody has any further questions, and I'm happy to do that. Amy is saying thanks for the shout out. You are welcome. Amy, I think you mainly specialize in the hotel and hospitality industry, do you? We have a number of different types of businesses here, but Amy is a fabulous person, in particular if you're in the events and hospitality industry, when it comes to finding business everywhere. And wow, how well she has her team trained too. Okay, so yeah, you're all about the travel industry, Amy. Cool. Okay, so folks, if what I'd really love is for you to write one thing that you are going to commit to doing different as a result of the last 56 minutes of your life. It's important to me that you walk away with something, with thinking different, or motivated, or a bit of inspiration on where you want to tackle, or what it is that you want to change and do a little bit different in your business. And I'd love you to share that, because I find if you share it, if you put it out there, that it's more likely that you're going to do something about it. It's like making a commitment. It's like, I've said it loud right now that I'm doing my 100-day challenge. That's for a walk every day. So I started on January 2nd, and so far I have. It's about a half-hour walk, and it's my first time to say it out loud. I've kind of been doing it just quietly myself, but the more I put it out there, the more likely it is that I'm going to keep to it, because I said it out loud and I'm going to do it, So margin and proposals that win, you're going to focus on that. Excellent, good stuff. And I know in the industry that you're in, the proposals can tend to be really long. I was reviewing a proposal from a client there last week, and it was a 100-page proposal. I was like, oh, wow, you know, I'd forgotten what the first 10 pages were about by the time I got to the end of it. So the proposal is, it can be a minefield, but it's worthwhile once you do get into it. So folks, I know some of you have written some questions there in the Q&A box, and I'm conscious of time, and I don't have time to get to all of them, but some of you are concerned of, you know, what is the appetite out there for right now? How are you able to get clients when we don't have that face-to-face interaction, and we don't perhaps have trade shows? There's some trade shows happening, but you know, not as many, or you can't physically go to a client's office. And I would encourage you to go back to that step one, and how are you really, you know, standing out? How are you showing the client immediately that you are relevant, that you understand what's happening in their world, what their industry is about? And it can take a little bit longer. It can take a little bit longer to earn that conversation and to try and build up enough trust and confidence with them to get that hour or get that 20-minute conversation with them. LinkedIn is a wonderful way of doing that, and I send a lot of personal videos myself, you know, 1-minute videos, in order to really stand out, and that has opened up a lot of conversations for me with senior people. I also do a lot of research, and you know, sometimes I genuinely just want to speak to somebody to get research, and a lot of people are very willing to help. And you know, sometimes you can assume when you're not hearing back from somebody that they're not interested, right? And sometimes it can be that they're either not ready now, or it's a really bad time for them, you know. And so what do you have in place that you can't be hounding somebody? You can't be constantly leaving them a voicemail or sending them an email. So have you a number of different types of ways of having a touch point with a client? Because it can take, you know, the last stats were that it can take between 12 and 15 touch points with a client, but that was pre-pandemic. I would imagine that has changed, and a lot of salespeople give up after 2. So you know, so don't give up, but I think it takes having a plan and really thinking through what is the kind of experience that I need to give. Okay, so Fiona, as I'm a small business, I've never really focused on building a healthy sales funnel. So you're going to look at that. Absolutely. You know, the more specific you are, the more likely it is that you're going to get a conversation with that person. And I know I was speaking with Aileen there before Christmas, and immediately, you know, she took some nuggets from our conversation, and she came up with the types of clients that she would like to have conversations with, that she would like to do business with, and put it out there to her network. Oh, this is a type of company that I'm interested in speaking to, and hey presto, somebody in her network could make that introduction for her. So you know, it's a very worthwhile area to spend some time in, Fiona, and I would encourage you to do that. So folks, link to my calendar there if anybody would like a conversation. Oops, I think I'm after going into the wrong area. There's my slides. And this is my contact information if you would like to reach out. So the pessimist complains about the wind. The optimist expects it to change, but the leader adjusts the sail. So well done to you, and I really appreciate your time. It's been fabulous to have you here, and you know, let me know if today was of value to you. As a quick little survey right at the very end. Thanks a million, folks, and yeah, you're all most welcome. And please have written down a commitment. If you don't want to share it, that's fine, but write down some kind of commitment as to what you're taking from today's session. Okay, thanks a million, folks. Take care. Have a good rest of day. Bye.